Good evening and welcome to the Marlington Local School District Board of Education meeting of Thursday, November 10th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Invocation, Charlie Mort.
Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us all to be here tonight. I ask that you watch over the members of the Board of Education tonight and allow their discussions to be meaningful and productive. Lord, I also pray for the staff as they do a lot for our school as our students. And thank you, Lord, for all of the support we get here from the community and the parents. They do everything for us. As Veterans Day is practically here, I would like to say a big thank you to all the veterans here today as for their service for our country, for the bravery that they've shown throughout their lives. And finally, Lord, as we end the meeting tonight, I pray that you allow everybody to get home safely and back to their families. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Hagan?
Here.
Mrs. Humphries?
Here.
Mrs. Krupko?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Swift?
Here.
Reading of the mission statement, Mrs. Kathy Krupko.
In collaboration with staff, community, parents, and students, the Marlington Local School District will develop lifelong learners who understand and apply knowledge and demonstrate excellence in pursuing the highest standards with effective intervention to challenge every student.
Thank you. Additions or corrections to the meeting agenda? None, okay. We need a motion to recommend that we adopt the following agenda for the November 10th, 2022 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Passed 5-0.
Thank you. Public participation. Has anyone signed up?
No requests were received.
Thank you. Special presentations.
Okay, this is the time we get to do our November Students of the Month. So we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Farrell to have our high school Elk Students of the Month.
Good evening. I'm Mike Farrell, high school principal, and tonight I'm going to recognize two of our students as Elks Teens of the Month here. First student I'd like to call forward is Ava Collins. Ava, can you come up? Ava is the daughter of Michael and Tammy Collins. She is a member of National Honor Society, Spanish National Honor Society, a 4-year member of Character Counts Club, 3-year member of Rotary Interact Club, and 2-year Duke Crew leader. Ava is a captain and 4-year letter winner on the varsity girls soccer and softball teams, and a 2-year member of the varsity girls basketball team, who is scrimmaging tonight, right? Awesome. Her hobbies include playing sports, reading, and spending time with her family and friends. Following graduation, Ava plans to attend college in hopes of going into anesthesiology. Ava's teachers describe her as a wonderful young lady with many positive qualities. Academically, she is a model student in every way. She excels in honors and CCP courses. She's extremely conscientious and offers her best effort at all times. She works well with other students and often is helping others to understand the material. Ava is extremely polite and respectful at all times. She's courteous and friendly and gets along well with others. She is honest and trustworthy, and the pillars of character are displayed in all areas of her life. Ava is a young lady of integrity and has earned the respect of her peers and the staff here at Marlington High School. She's the type of student who makes Marlington proud and is most deserving of this honor tonight. Ava, it's my pleasure to recognize you as an Elks Teen of the Month. Congratulations. Our other Elks Teen of the Month is Connor Battershell. Connor, come forward. Connor is the son of Mike and Janine Battershell. He is Secretary of National Honor Society and Spanish National Honor Society. Popular, too. Look at that. There you go. All right. Got an appointment somewhere? Okay, all right. Connor is a 2022 Buckeye Boys State Delegate, 2-year Duke Crew Leader, and 4-year member of Rotary Interact Club, Character Counts Club, Robotics Club, and Spanish Club. Connor is a captain on the varsity golf team. In his free time, Connor enjoys playing golf with friends. And I think you like playing poker, too? Yeah. He's got the best parking spot in the parking lot. It's awesome. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Poker chips, the Doyle Brunson hand 10s and 2s. It's awesome. But your sister helps you paint it, right? A little bit, okay. Following graduation, he plans to attend college to study electrical engineering. Connor's teachers say that he's such a wonderful student. He's attentive, hardworking, and always strives to do his best. In addition to being a wonderful student, he's a wonderful young man as well. He walks in with a smile on his face every day, a pleasant attitude, and a willingness to be a team player. His volunteer efforts with Interact are always genuine, and even though he is active in many other extracurricular activities, he is generous with his time. Connor is very deserving of receiving this honor tonight, and we're so excited to see what the future holds for him. Connor, it's my pleasure to recognize you as well as an Elks Teen of the Month. Congratulations. Next up is middle school principal Mike Rizzoletti.
Good evening. For the middle school's first student of the month, we'd like to recognize Annika Williamson. Her teachers had many good things to say about her. Annika is a wonderful student. Her work is always completed with thoughtfulness. She's set apart by the kindness and positivity she spreads. She always brings a great attitude to school, and she's helpful and caring. Annika's really improved in band and took on the added responsibility to join the high school marching band. Annika takes great pride in doing great work. She's always in a positive mood and is very pleasant to have in class. Annika participates in Power of the Pen. Not only is she an awesome writer, but she also helps out our 6th and 7th grade writers become stronger at writing and at creating stories. Annika is also a member of our Academic Challenge team, and this year she'll help lead the team as one of our 8th grade team captains. The middle school is really proud to recognize Annika Williamson. The middle school would also like to recognize Cameron Evanich. Teachers also had many great things to say about Cameron. He's the son of Nick and Andrea Evanich. Cameron Evanich is an outstanding young man. His work ethic truly sets him apart. He works diligently to complete tasks and is never afraid to ask questions to deepen his understanding. Cameron always works hard and puts a lot of thought and effort into his work. He always has something funny and positive to say, always volunteers and helps out, and is positive, fun, and such a leader. He works so incredibly hard to make sure he's understanding the material and doing his best. He never complains, he stays on task, he uses his presence in class and the building to set a good example for others, asks what he can do to improve, and in general is just a great person and student. We are so proud for the good decisions that he chooses to make, and we look forward to seeing him every day. The middle school would also like to recognize Cameron Evanich. Thank you, and now we're on to Lexington and Mrs. Weber.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Ashley Weber, and I'm the principal at Lexington Elementary, and I have the pleasure of recognizing C.J. Brown, son of Haley Ring and Cortland Brown. C.J. is our 5th grade Kiwanis Student of the Month, and his teachers have some nice things to say about him. C.J. is a polite, respectful, hardworking student. He works conscientiously and diligently and always strives to do his best. Not only does CJ strive for greatness in the classroom, but he is a star on the basketball court and the baseball team as well. CJ's determination and skill makes him an all-around standout. Great job, CJ. Keep up the hard work, and the rewards will come. Mrs. Porter and Mrs. Kellums. Also, what CJ has to tell us about him is that his favorite subject in school is math. He really enjoys playing card games with his family. He doesn't have any pets, and he is lucky that he lives with his grandma, his dad, his mom, and his sister. Something that he'd like to do in the future, CJ'd like to go to Florida to visit some friends. He'd also like to go to Universal Studios. Me too. And he would also like to be a pro athlete. I think that's in your future, sir. One more thing about him, in case you didn't know, he plays travel baseball. He enjoys the Xbox, and he is a basketball standout. Congratulations, CJ. Lexington is proud of you. Next up, Mrs. Mort, Marlboro Elementary.
Good evening, folks. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the November Kiwanis Student of the Month, Kylie Vickers. Kylie is an excellent big sister. Let me give you a brief story. Every morning, the 3 girls, they're adorable too, they walk into the building, down the main hallway, and one's gonna go up the steps and the other 2 are gonna go different ways, and they do a group sister hug right there. She makes sure it happens every morning. It's nice to see. Big sister. A little bit about Kylie from her teachers. Kylie was chosen because she is a wonderful student who cares very much about her academics. She has an excellent work ethic and is very caring to all of her friends. Kylie is also a great asset to our student council. Finally, Kylie does a wonderful job of modeling our Duke Pride expectations for our younger students. Well done, Kylie. Keep up the great work. Kylie's favorite subject in school is math. She is especially fond of both of her teachers, Mrs. Beatles and Mr. Greco. Some special things about Kylie's family. Kylie lives with her 2 sisters, Kelsey and Kenley, and they're here, and Mom and Dad. The whole family has a great time riding horses together. Kylie notes that they live at the Vickers Zoo, and they have a baby donkey, a pig, turkeys, chickens, baby goats, horses, dogs, cats, and fish. And she includes her 2 sisters in the zoo. Kylie and her family enjoy riding 4-wheelers, climbing trees, riding horses, and caring for all of their animals. She has a special story to share about her sisters and her being outdoorsy girls. She shared about the time when the girls were playing catch with frozen horse manure. In fact, Kelsey caught it in her mouth. And, well, Kylie definitely enjoys the outdoors. Kylie's future plans. For a career, she is considering being a cosmetologist, and she still wants to travel and participate in rodeos. Kylie is going to continue to work really hard to achieve her goal of being in the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas. This is something that someone has to qualify for. The finalists are the top 15 cowboys and cowgirls in the world. She would also like to be on the Netflix show, How to Be a Cowboy. In Kylie's free time, she participates in the Rocky Fork Rodeo Company. She competes in 10 rodeos every season. The last season, she won 7 of the 8 events that earned her all-around honors. She was awarded a saddle for first place and the highest points buckle. Kylie, you're a very hard worker. Congratulations, kiddo. Kylie Vickers, Kiwanis Student of the Month, Marlboro Elementary. How could I forget? Washington Elementary, Mr. Spondiel.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce the Washington Elementary Student of the Month, Frankie Rice. Why Frankie was selected. She has been chosen as November Kiwanis Student of the Month because she enters every situation she is in with kindness and compassion in mind. She's a constant encouragement to others around her, never holds back a kind word, and pushes herself to give her best effort even on the most challenging tasks. Frankie is an inspiring example of what a student leader should look like, and she has proven that she is worthy of that position recently by being elected to the Washington Elementary Student Council. Keep working so hard, Frankie. We are very proud of you and enjoy seeing you be a Duke worth following every day. Her favorite subjects in school are reading and social studies. When asked about her family, Frankie says she lives at home with her one cat named Jazzy. She has a brother, Nolan, her mom, Heather, and her dad, Adam, and she really enjoys spending time with the entire family. In the future, Frankie would like to attend the University of Mount Union and play soccer for them. And, bonus points for this, she'd like to study elementary education. Pretty cool. One interesting thing about herself, she plays soccer. She plays with an all-girls team, and they just placed first in the regular season. She had a really fun time, and she likes soccer because there are a lot of ways to work hard and to get good results. Congrats again, Frankie.
Okay, at this time, the special presentations are over. This will be the opportunity, if you do wish not to stay for the regular board meeting, this would be a time that you can go ahead and leave if you choose, or you can stay for the remainder of the board meeting. Let's give the opportunity. No, not happen. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So special presentation, 5-year forecast. We are connecting to, or are connected to, Ryan Gazzoni of Forecast 5.
Should be right behind you.
Here we are, okay.
Thanks for having me. I'll bring up my screen.
We can hear you.
That's what I'm
Can you hear me now?
1 second.
So I'm going to bring up my screen here. Everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for having me. I'm here to present the November forecast that I worked on with your treasurer as well as your superintendent. I'll start with an overview of the simplified forecast. So basically what's going on with your revenue and expenses. You started the year with about $7.9 million. You're estimated to receive about $24 million, and we're going to go into some changes in revenue this year. And then also spend about $24.3 million to have an operating deficit this year of about $158,000. That, even though it's an operating deficit, it's a pretty significant improvement from the May forecast. And a lot of that has to do with the efforts of the district to reduce expenses, and we'll go over some of those here in a little bit. But in the May forecast, this was a little bit over $2.2 million of deficit spending. So there's been a lot of changes. There's been some changes on the revenue part as well that we'll go into. But overall, the district's expected to end with about $7.8 million in cash at the end of this fiscal year, and then start deficit spending by about $950,000 next year. One significant change on the forecast is the results of this week's elections. Your renewal levy passed, which moved that revenue from this line item here up into the revenue line item. So that was one change. It didn't change the bottom line, but it did change where the revenue was categorized. Overall, the district, as you can see, your revenue starting is pretty flat. You are going to expect to have a little bit of a decrease next year that we're going to go over. But overall, there's not anticipated to be any increases in revenue for the 5-year forecast period. Very minimal increases in 25 and 26 and some decreases next year. On the expense side, because of the COVID funding the district had received in 21 and 22 and is still using, as well as those budget reductions that we had mentioned, the district's basically been able to keep level spending from 21 through 23. Still have expenses less than what you expended in 2020 for the current fiscal year. And then you can see it starts to increase in 24 and 25 that we'll go over. A lot of this has to do with the expiration of the ESSER funds and the district starting to bring those expenses back into the general fund starting in 24 and 25. So one area I did want to talk a little bit about is with your tangible personal property. So there has been a change since the May forecast was filed. Unfortunately, it is not great news for the district. It's still a lot of uncertainty. And I'm going to share a different screen so that you can see that, a report that I have. So what happened was there's been an ongoing lawsuit with the pipeline. And because of that, the pipeline has been granted under law to basically pay their taxes at the amount that they've challenged and not at the full rate. And so what we have here is some information on what's happened. So initially, the Nexus original valuation was estimated at about $64 million, the pipeline running through the district. I'm sorry, through this. And then what happened is that there was an agreement reached this spring between the Ohio Department of Taxation and the pipeline as far as a settlement that they agreed on a value for that pipeline. The pipeline, based off that agreement, decided that they were going to pay some retroactive payments in anticipation of the agreement going through. And then they were going to start paying at this new agreed upon amount. One of the stipulations of that was all the county auditors had to agree on this tax increase, this agreement. And every county auditor involved did agree except for one, and that was the Lorain County Auditor. The Lorain County Auditor objected, thought that the value should be higher, and as a result, a couple of weeks, months after this agreement was initially preliminary reached between the Ohio Department of Taxation and the pipeline, it was voided. So this would have been the value, $37 million, that was agreed upon. So it would have been a $26 million value change. That's not taxes, but the actual value. And then as a result of that, the Nexus pipeline sought an additional reduction since this was voided of $8.8 million. And so what's happened is not only did that not get settled, and it's still out and has to be still go through the process, but they're now going to start paying on a lower amount. So your total tangible or your total personal property was being collecting at about 57% of the value that the full value. Now, based off this additional reduction that they're requesting, they're going to start moving forward paying 46% starting this spring. What does that mean to the school district? It means that you're going to lose, or they're not going to pay about $400,000 to the district a year of pipeline revenue. Now, we are estimating in the forecast that worst case scenario that they're going to get granted their $26 million reduction plus the additional 8.8. And that's what we have moving forward in the forecast. If that were to change, that was not to be awarded, or there was another agreement to be reached, then we would adjust the forecast at that time. Based off of the information that I've understood is that this now could take an additional 6 to 7 years before an agreement's reached and this process plays out. So we still have some time before we're going to know. It could be agreed upon earlier, but once again, it has to go through that process where all the county auditors agree to it. So just to put this in kind of perspective, this is the original Nexus estimate, the value of their pipeline. This here was the settlement value, what was agreed upon. And this is now currently what they're paying on. This is what they've requested that property be valued at, and they're paying those taxes on moving forward. So I'll bring back my forecast here, but the one thing effect that had is it's about $400,000 less to the school district annually. It expects that gets settled. And I'll bring back the forecast. Now, the one thing with your district's forecast is that the pipeline revenue you were receiving was being transferred out. And so when we reduce the revenue projections in the forecast, we also reduce the transfer out each year because of those reductions. So the net effect on the bottom line of the forecast is zero because it's a general fund, but it means it's less money that's going to be transferred in that 070 fund that you've been transferring those funds into. You did receive a bump this year, and I will show you that in your taxes because they paid that additional revenue in anticipation that this pipeline was going to be decreased. So you also had a little bit of an increase, higher than anticipated collections in your real estate, so that helped out as well. You can see moving forward, we have in blue here is your real estate, the most substantial part. Not a whole lot of changes until that next emergency levy comes into play. And then you also have your tangible personal property, and you can see what it was collecting in 23. We estimate you're going to collect around 2.4, collect 2.8 million last year, and is going to drop to about 1.9 million by 2025 based off that lower amount that they're paying on. State aid for your school district, you are a guaranteed district. What that means is that when you go through the funding formula, it's basically calculating that you should be getting less than you did in 2020. So there's a 2020 guarantee in there, and there's a 21 guarantee. There's two different guarantees. And because it does not calculate amount more than that, you're guaranteed to get at least what you got in either 21 or 20 based off of what guarantee you hit. That's based on current law. That law will expire or could potentially change at the end of this calendar year when the legislators will start working on their new state funding formula. It's unknown if they're going to maintain the current funding formula or make any changes. We'll know probably shortly after the year when the governor introduces his budget. It then goes to the House and to the Senate, and then by July we know what the new funding formula is, if it's going to change or keep the existing one. What we know is that based off current projections, you can see the combination of your restricted here in orange and your unrestricted in blue. It's basically flat funded. We're not expecting any additional funding from the state for the school district. I think the most important part for your district is to try and maintain, if you're talking to legislators, that you at least get the amounts that you've gotten last year, or in this case, the 2020 guarantee. Another line item that is changing, you'll notice you do have an increase in all other revenue. All the revenue makes up things like tuition, any type of payment in lieu of taxes, any type of fees that are paid, and also interest income. And one of the reasons that you're seeing an increase from 22 to 23 is because the interest rate market has changed significantly. A lot of school districts have earned more in the first couple of months of the year than they did all of last year. We've anticipated those increases in here. And then as you can see, as moving forward, all of the revenue starts to decrease, and that decreases because as your cash balance decreases, you're going to receive less. You have less money available to invest, so you're going to get less interest income. This could be volatile depending on what happens. If you had a decrease in interest rate market, which is not in the foreseeable future based off of everything that's going on, then this could start to decrease. But right now, this is what we're seeing as far as where you're at currently for the year. We've been tracking your revenue and expenses through the first 4 months and modified any type of projections we have based off what you've collected or expended in the first 4 months. Before I go into expenses, any questions on revenue I could answer?
Yeah, Ryan, this is Jonathan Swift. Can you explain how the Nexus money affects our state funding based on what they think we're getting versus what we're actually getting?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a big part of the state funding formula is determining local wealth per pupil. And local wealth per pupil is made up of two things. It's going to be made up of property tax value divided by the number of pupils, as well as your median income as relation to the rest of the state. Well, one of the things that is harming your district as far as the state funding formula goes is that it's anticipating, if you remember that visual I showed, that they had the Nexus pipeline at, I think, $86 million. It's calculating that your wealth per pupil at the $86 million level. And we know that Nexus is only paying at 45%. So it's something that until it's awarded, it's not going to be removed, but it's inflating your wealth per pupil, even though you're not getting that revenue from the pipeline.
Are there any plans at the state level that you know of to address this issue? Because we can't be the only ones that are dealing with this. And also, is there a number we can associate with that? Is that like, it's costing us $200,000 a year, $100,000 a year? What's the actual cost to us based on this funding formula catastrophe?
That's definitely something. I don't have that number for you. It's definitely something I can calculate and give to Patty within the next couple of days to have that for you. There's a lot of conversations with lobbyists at the state level. So I have heard that obviously the school districts, and there are a number of school districts with different pipelines in their district, but Nexus and Rover being the two biggest, that would like to see some type of adjustment because they're not getting any of the revenue, or they're not getting a large percentage of the revenue. Whether or not that makes it into legislation or not, probably the thing that I could recommend the most is to contact your legislators and make sure you make the district's position known and how it's impacting you. And once again, I can do that calculation, figure out how much would that affect you if they weren't including that in the calculation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. All right, moving on to expenses then. I'm going to show you a comparison of what this forecast looks like compared to the May forecast. And that's where the district's really, this year, has made one of the greatest strides in reducing the expense side to offset the operating deficit. So you basically, the expenditure reduction plan you guys have in place affects 2 fiscal years. So a part of it went into place this year. And you can see that compared to the May forecast, your salaries are down about $758,000, and your benefits are down about $408,000. Outside of that, you've had some minimal changes in purchase services and supplies. Moving into next year, you'll notice that your salaries are reduced by an additional $1.2 million. Now, a portion of that is going to be offset by increases in purchase services because the district had employees that they're replacing with contracting out with other services, other organizations. And that's why a portion of these savings move down into here. But overall, you can see the district's expenses for this year are about $1.3 million, a little over $1.3 million lower than what was in the May forecast. And that grows to $2 million by 2024. So definitely making some strides. The one thing you will notice here is this reduction down here of $442,000 in operating transfers out. That goes along with what I mentioned earlier with the revenue, the Nexus pipeline paying less in taxes. We took the same amount that we estimated they'd be paying less and reduced it from the transfer out as well. When we look at salaries moving forward, I'll bring that up here. The district has reduced salaries this year, you can see, compared to where you were in 2022. And even though there are additional salary savings in 24, you can't necessarily see them in this graph, but when I scroll down to here, you can see there's additional, and this green here is certified, meaning your teaching staff, an additional $139,000. Now that's being offset by increases in classified salaries, about $139,000. That doesn't mean the school district is hiring additional staff. What that means is these are the funds that were being paid out of ESSER that are starting to come back in 2024, and that's why you're seeing an increase in classified here. As you move into 2025, you can see that there's an increase in both certified as well as classified. And that's, once again, this is a larger chunk of your ESSER funding expiring, the district utilizing all of it, and it coming back in the general fund. That is all done once you get past 25. All that staff is brought back in. That was being paid for out of there. There are some positions that the district, I believe, is not intending on bringing back. And then moving forward, this is basically step increases, base wage increases are the increases we're showing in 26 and 27. The district, when we look at your benefits, this is, you can see that you did not have the increases in previous years that you are seeing here. Part of the healthcare consortium that the district is in has things called premium holidays. Premium holidays means that there are specific months, or you get a number of months you don't have to pay during the year. And they change the number of holidays that they give depending on the activity of the consortium. So in years past, you've had as many as 3 premium holidays. Last year, I believe you had 2, and this year you're only having 1 premium holiday. So that when you don't have as many in premium holidays, that means you're paying 12 payments instead of 11 like you did. I'm sorry, you're paying 10 payments in 22, you're paying 11 payments in 23. You get to skip a month. So we do have, you did have an increase of about a little bit over 7.5% this year in premiums as well. We do have premium increases of 8% built in moving forward, as well as 1 premium holiday each year. If the consortium was to come back and say they're awarding more than 1 or they're not awarding 1, then these projections obviously would change in future years. But based off the information we had, it's been a very long time since the consortium did not have any premium holidays, so we felt that it was important to have at least 1 in there. But based off the information that they've been providing, we did not feel that we had any solid information to say there's going to be more than 1. And then your retirement just increases as your salary increases. It's a fringe benefit, salary-driven fringe benefit so as your salaries go up, that you saw in the previous graph, then you're also going to see your retirement go up as well. Under purchase services, with the change in the state funding formula from 21 to 22, there was a significant change in tuition, meaning both open enrollment revenue coming into the district, as well as open enrollment expenses, community schools, and scholarships are no longer charged to the districts. That's why you see this big drop from 21 to 22. This pink here is the district's tuition moving forward. We're pretty comfortable with this is. Basically, this would be students that are given instruction outside of the school district or maybe court place or foster place in another school district. So we have those moving forward here, as well as your utility costs are expected to increase this year based off the trends we're currently seeing, and we've continued inflationary growth moving forward. These are basically your repair costs here in orange. And then the one thing I wanted to point out in blue here is going to be your 410, which are your contracted services. And you can see you did bring some expenses back in the general fund that were paid from a fund that was called a wellness fund previously. That came back this year. And then just like we showed in that one comparison, because you're shifting some staff from salary to contracted service, you see a much larger increase in 24, and then just inflationary growth moving forward. But the most important thing to keep in mind here is a large proportion of this increase from 23 to 24 is not the district going out and getting additional services. They're replacing services that were paid for by salaries with these purchase services here. And then finally, we have all other expenses. All other expenses, this in red is the transfers out of the Nexus pipeline revenue going into the 070 fund. You can see supplies and materials. You actually look like you're going to dip this year, and then you have an increase next year. That increase is because the district did utilize a lot of ESSER funds to pay things like your laptop, tablet replacements, a lot of software, and then also a lot of custodial supplies. Those will be coming back in 24. And then it's pretty just inflationary growth moving forward there as well. Capital outlay is very minimal, projected in the forecast because the district utilizes the 070 fund and the PI fund to make those purchases. So there's about, this year and moving forward, just a little over $100,000 each year. And then you have other objects. Other objects are going to be county auditor and treasurer fees, as well as some of the contracted services that you have with the county ESC, you pay through this line item. And so those have been pretty steady, and we anticipate those being pretty steady moving forward. So with that, just going back to that analysis that we have, that simplified statement, the district has done a great job at reducing this operating deficit from where it was in 23. Still has some work to do moving forward, and that's mainly because of what we saw with this graph right here. The district does not have a means to increase revenue at this point. Property taxes is a major portion of your revenue, and the only time you're really going to see that change is when there's a trial update and or reappraisal at this point. Besides that, there's no other large way to increase your revenue. And as much as the district continues to try and reduce the overall increases in expenses, as those ESSER funds come in out here, is where you start to see this greater increase in deficit spending moving forward. Any questions I can answer?
Ryan, I got a couple more. This is Jonathan Swift.
Sure.
Do we have a dollar figure on the gap between what ESSER was that we're going to have to absorb? I mean, what's the total we're on the hook for moving forward?
How much you were paying out of ESSER? Let me see what I can bring up here. I might have a visual that I can give you that exact amount, at least for last year. That is not coming up here. I can pull that up. I can tell you how much you had last year, and then you're basically paying a majority of the same this year. So your ESSER fund you spent about $2.1 million in 2021. Last year was about $1 million that you expended, and it looks like you're anticipating spending about $1.4 million this year. So that comes back into the general fund by 2025. Now, some of that was one-time revenue or one-time expenses that the district invested in that might not necessarily all come back in, but a big portion of that is coming back in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, the other question, Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, but go ahead.
The other question I have is based on this revenue stream that we just looked at, when do we need to start thinking about a levy that moves things forward? Are we a year out, 2 years out, 10 years out? Where's your recommendation?
I would definitely be in that conversation that's looking at next. So you're always, if you pass a levy today, you're going to get half that revenue this year and then the full amount next year. So if you were to go, let's say next November, you're starting to have an operating deficit here, and then you can see moving forward. So I would definitely start having that conversation this spring because whether you passed one this spring, November, but definitely by the following May, you definitely want to be looking at either further reducing expenses or increasing revenue. Because the closer you get to this gap, the farther away that this gets from being a positive number and a negative, the harder it is the more millage you have to go to correct it. So the farther out you can go, the smaller amount you can go, depending on what you do with any additional expense reduction.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan, this is Mark, board member Mark. Can you explain again when the state, when Columbus approves this funding formula, is that a calendar year? Is that what you said? Did I understand that? It's a calendar year budget, and then of course we're on a fiscal year budget. So the current budget or the current fiscal budget for the state ends this December. Is that correct? And then they approve a new one for next year. Can you explain that again?
It is a fiscal year, so it starts in July, but the budget process starts in January, and so what happens is once the governor will have his state of the state, he'll introduce his budget. Once he introduces his budget, it goes to the House, and the House then either agrees with some of the stuff in the governor's budget or they come up with their own version. They then send it to the Senate. The Senate then has an opportunity to do the same process. Are they going to agree with the governor or the House or have their own? And then depending on what those changes are, it goes to could potentially go to what's called a conference committee where all three groups come together and agree on a budget. By July 1st, that budget's supposed to be in place because it starts funding that fiscal year moving forward. The funding formula is a 2-year process. So the funding formula that they're working on for schools that'll go into effect this July will cover 24 and 25.
Okay, so we're not going to know anything up until the, June, maybe the end of June. It might be one of those last-minute things we find out right before the new fiscal year starts, correct?
Yeah, what'll happen is we'll get an indication on the governor to see where he's thinking, and then we'll see the House, the district through the school board organization, the superintendent organization, the treasurer organization, have lobbyists that will kind of get a feel as far as here's where we think things are going. And then as soon as we see the governor's budget, the House budget, and the Senate budget, we will have calculations for the district to say, here's what it means for this year, here's what it means moving forward. There's been years that's been very predictable, and what the governor or the House came out with is what ended up coming pretty close to law. There's been other years that it's been completely different from what that body introduced. So yeah, at the end of the day, and there's been rare occasions where it goes into July and we don't actually know till the second week in July what's going on. But most of the time, towards May forecast, we're gonna have a pretty good idea what it is. But we don't have a definitive answer until that budget's approved.
But I guess, historically, there hasn't been big swings one way or the other. It's pretty much flatlined for as long as I can see, going back maybe 10, 15 years. Is that your estimation?
There's this past funding form was a major change in the way schools are funded. I would say that's probably been the biggest change. There's been some different ones in the past. The one thing I think that's of most interest for your school district is historically there's always some type of guarantee in place. And the guarantee, there's been a 95% guarantee, a 97%, but those were based off of large decreases in enrollment. So the hope is, and the thing that I would be pressing for if I was your school district, is at a minimum to make sure that those guarantees are in place so you're not going backwards at all. You're at least getting the same amount of money that you got in this case in 2020.
Right. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, well, I know I have a little bit of homework to do. I will get that calculation to Patty to tell you what the funding.
Ryan, I got one more question. This is
Go ahead.
this is Dan. I just for clarification, because I know you talked about the 1.3 million, but obviously that doesn't. The May forecast said we were projected 2+ million deficit. So you're down to 158,000 deficit spending. Where's the other 700,000 coming from?
Yeah, where do the changes come from? So absolutely, I can bring that up for you. So the big differences that we have here is on the revenue side, your real estate's up about 293,000, and that's because you had better collection rates than anticipated. And then we do have built in moving forward some, because of where the housing market is, even though there's still some uncertainty, we increased our estimates for future increases in values. This 273 here is the additional payment the pipeline made. It gets a little bit confusing because you have your part of your pipeline money was down here in the renewal replacement. So overall, you're up in taxes about 549,000, and then down the 444 and the 436. These decreases are mainly due to the drops in the pipeline. It's almost all due to the drop in the pipeline paying less. And then you have an additional 165,000 in other revenue compared to what was in the May forecast. The vast majority of that is because of the interest rates going from basically 0.02, 0.03. Even if you just have it in a Star Ohio account right now, I think it's over 2.5%, if not 3% at this point. So that's where a lot of this increase came from. On the expense side, you have 758,000 less in salaries, 408 less in benefits, and you can see some smaller amounts here for supplies and purchase service and capital, but that comes to 1.3 million. So it's the combination of the 1.368 as well as this 725 in additional revenue that closes the gap, and now you only have that 158,000.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Very much.
All right.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Great.
Thank you. I'll put that additional information to you. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free. Patty can email me. I'll definitely get those for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. OSBA presentation, Kathy?
There really isn't much for this month because the focus on the OSBA is our capital conference, which starts Sunday evening, and the entire board, I believe, is going Monday and Tuesday, in addition to Mr. Swisher.
And Miss Kaylee. Mrs. Kaylee will be joining us also.
Oh,
Yeah, cool. All right.
Mrs. Kaylee's also going. But everybody has their badges, everybody has a sample program to look at to pick out what conferences, what breakout sessions we want to go to, or any that Mr. Swisher wants to suggest that some of us get to. That's
Awesome.
about it.
Thank you.
Speaking of Mrs. Cayley, curriculum update from Mrs. Renee Cayley.
Good evening. Okay, thank you. That's okay. Good evening. I am here this evening to share a curriculum report for November. First of all, I just wanted to apologize for my absence last month. We had a family emergency, so a lot of the things that I'm presenting this evening was what I wanted to present back in October. So they're a little late, but still, nonetheless, they are just as important. So this evening, we're going to talk a little bit about our Reaching All Students Through Language and Literacy grant that we received, as well as I'm proud to share with you the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council Award, or OLAC award, that we just were notified that we received for this year. And then we also are going to spend a little bit of time diving into our district report card, and then allowing an opportunity for you all to ask any questions in regards to our report card, okay? First of all, I know that Mr. Swisher had shared with you in regards to that Reaching All Students grant. I'm really excited because Marlington was one of only 20 school districts in the entire state of Ohio to receive this grant. So it was a pretty competitive grant, and we are receiving the full amount, which was $200,000. And so what we are able to use that for is yet to be determined in regards to based upon what the work we'll be doing this year. So the timeline and the use of funds. So during this school year, we have the team that's listed up here for you. That is our grant team for this particular grant. These individuals will be going through a series of professional learning opportunities that will be directed by experts in the field. I think we just got our dates today, and there's like 7 or 8 dates, and they're like 2 or 3 hours a piece. And so the funds this year that will be utilized are to cover the cost of any subs that would need to be obtained for us to attend those professional learning opportunities, as well as any work that's done outside of the work day, so stipends for the staff members that are participating. And then the bulk of the $200,000 throughout the course of these professional learning opportunities, we're also going to be doing what's called a root cause analysis in regards to our literacy instruction in our K-5 buildings. And from that, we're going to determine how we will use the remainder of the funds. What is unheard of is typically when you receive a grant of this magnitude from the state or federal government, you oftentimes are not allowed to purchase what's called core curriculum, which is like your main curriculum that you would use. This grant is an exception. So if we determine that we have a desperate need for tier 1 or core instruction in literacy in K-5, we will be able to utilize the bulk of this amount to purchase that. And just so you all know, we are going to start a K-5 potential curriculum adoption committee for ELA. And so simultaneously, we'll be looking at resources and conducting an audit and doing a thorough investigation of resources that are out there in the event that we decide we want to go in that direction, okay? Any questions about that so far? So,
Oh, that's awesome. Though.
yeah, super excited. The next thing is we were notified, what was it, Mr. Swisher, last week were we notified? That we were nominated and are receiving the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council Outstanding District Award for 2022. This award recognizes just one Ohio public school district annually that shows effective leadership practices and strong examples of what is called shared leadership in the Ohio Improvement Process model. And for those of you that are not familiar with OLAC, what OLAC is it's a partnership between Buckeye Association of School Administrators, you might hear it called BASA a lot of times, and the Ohio Department of Education. And so it's they put together a multitude of resources for educators across the state and administrators across the state to use in regards to facilitating district leadership teams, teacher-based teams, building leadership teams. And so we are going to be recognized at their annual OLAC PBIS showcase on December 6th. And I just included a little excerpt from the congratulatory email that we received. So I'm going to read that to you this evening. It says, "Congratulations, the Marlington Local School District has been selected for the 2022 OLAC Outstanding District Award. This year we received multiple nominations, but Marlington stood out from the rest. The selection committee was very impressed with the work you and your team are doing and with the impressive Ohio Report Card results. It was clear to us that Marlington is focused on school improvement and inclusive leadership resulting in student success." So I think this goes a long way. We were nominated by our state support team, and this just goes to show the work that we're doing. You know, we started our district leadership team last year, and we're working through our building leadership teams and our teacher-based teams and really encompassing in the shared leadership model. And this is, you know, it's showing, people are recognizing that. And so I just want to congratulate those members that are on our district leadership team as well as that are on our building leadership teams and then even on our teacher-based teams, which means every person in our district is involved in this. So I'm super excited to be able to get this award. The only bummer is that it isn't going to be in person. It's an online showcase, so we're going to have to record our acceptance speeches. The last thing I wanted to do this evening was take a moment to go over our district report card. These were published a little while back in a lot of the newspapers and whatnot, and I wanted just to take a few moments this evening to do a brief overview and talk about the changes that the report card is showing now, and then give you an opportunity to see where we are at Marlington and what that means, okay? So just when we're thinking of school report cards, they're truly designed to give our parents, our community members, education, policymakers, information about the performance of districts and schools. So there are district report cards and school level report cards. And obviously we want to be able to celebrate the achievements of where we're doing well and also identify areas in which we need improvement. The neat part about these is that, you know, it is only one part of our picture. It's only one part of our story. And I will tell you that we have done a great job at our district leadership team meetings as well as into our building leadership team meetings of identifying Marlington's strengths and what are some areas or opportunities for growth and really spearheading what does that look like then as far as student outcomes and what do we need to be doing in our buildings to improve those areas that we saw some deficits. So I'm going to show you, this is the link for the Ohio School Report Cards. So it takes you to the ODE website, and then you can simply type in your district. So if you see that little search bar, and I am going to type in Marlington, and you'll see it starts to bring up Marlington High School. So I'm going to go to Marlington Local, Stark County, and then it brings you to the district homepage. There's a lot of information here. You can also dive into our special ed report, financial data, all those things. But what we're going to look at today is just the report card overview. Okay. So hopefully everybody can see that. So with our report card overview, if you look, there are 6 components on the school report card that every school district in this public school district in the state of Ohio is being evaluated through. Those include achievement, progress, gap closing, graduation, early literacy, and then the college career workforce and military readiness. You'll notice that that's not on there yet because that is not active yet. So that is something that's coming, okay? We have up to 5 stars that you can receive in each of these components, 3 being that you met the requirement, okay? So you met the state average in regards to that particular component. So when we did this activity with our our district leadership team, and I did it with our admin team, the first thing we did was just off of first glance, what are some areas of celebration? And what would be some areas that you would say would be some areas for growth for our district? And so right away, we did indicate gap closing. If you look at gap closing, and we're going to talk about what that is here in a moment, we got 5 out of 5 stars for gap closing. So we absolutely want to celebrate that because we met all of the requirements there. But the thing that I wanted to draw to everyone's attention is that because one of the things we said, oh, well, progress and early literacy, we only have 3 stars. So absolutely, those are areas in which we can grow. However, we still met the state requirement and the state expectations. So I think our entire report card is something to celebrate because in every category, we met the state's expectations. But once again, we as a team have talked about, but how do we grow even in that gap closing, even in the areas in which we're very pleased to see. So when we look at achievement, and that's that first one over here in the upper left-hand corner, what that is looking at is how our students are actually doing on the state assessments. So we have grades 4 through 8 mathematics and ELA assessments in the spring. We also have grades 5 and 8 science, and then we have our high school end of course exams. Based upon their achievement on those exams is how we obtain our star rating for achievement. And so I'm just going to show you this real quick. And it'll show you on the right-hand side all of the different areas in which we're tested and the percentage where we were at as far as how many reached proficiency or the proficient level. And then on the left-hand side, I wanted to show you this real quick. On the left-hand side, that's called our performance index. And basically what that does is it takes the achievement level, and let me see if I can make it a little bigger so that, there we go. What it does is it takes the achievement levels, looks at how many percentage of students that we had that were at each of those levels, and then we're assigned points. And that's how we get our performance index. So we have goal 1 in our 1 plan is about every student is going to make a year's worth of growth in mathematics and English language arts. And so that goal is going to help us here when it comes to our performance index. Because if we have a student, let's say, that's scoring at basic, which we have 16.6% of our kids there, we only receive 0.6 of a point for basic. If the instruction that we're doing, if we're pushing our students, if we're meeting our students where they're at and being able to close that gap for them, hopefully we can move those students from basic to proficient. And now we've gone from a 0.6 or a 0.6 of a point per student to a 1 point. Does that make sense? So our goal is with our, goal 1, not only is it going to obviously improve our achievement because our students are going to grow, but it's also going to help us in our performance index. And so our teams have done a great job at talking about how can we do that? What does that actually look like in the classroom? Okay, so that is your achievement. The next part is progress. Progress is when we are looking at, so those state assessments that we just talked about, you might hear the term value added. So it's looking at how did our students grow in relation to other students across the state that took the same assessments. If we're looking here, what you want to see is you want to see the dark grayish blue, okay, or the light grayish blue or green. Those are the 3 colors that you really want to see because the darkest grayish blue, that means that our students made more progress than was expected, and we have significant evidence there. So, for example, if you're looking at science in all grades. Or if you look at eighth grade ELA, math, science, okay? And then we recognize that we have some areas for growth in the red. That's significant evidence that our students made less progress than expected, okay? So once again, we've already begun having those conversations of trying to identify the why. Okay? Why is that? And sometimes, honestly, it could be maybe we had a teacher that was out on medical leave, you know, and those students had a substitute teacher for a duration of time. That is going to impact growth, right? Student growth. So a lot of conversations around the why. Okay. Any questions about those first two components so far?
Well, I think this is kind of related to that, but, you know, so about the why you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, is obviously COVID and that whole situation, I mean, where have you seen that impact most?
So here's the thing. When we're looking at stuff like this, it's not exclusive to the kids at Marlington. So when we are looking at value-added data, it is looking at our kids compared to other kids across the state that took the same test. And what is our growth in relation to those same kids, you know, to those other kids? So they all experienced COVID. You know, we all have different degrees as to whether we were closed down or in person, and we actually were very blessed because we had very minimal, 2 years ago, I think we missed like 3 weeks of instruction, where there were other districts that were closed down for months at a time. So I think when we're addressing the learning loss, I think everything that we're doing right now in regards to the vertical alignment and the understanding of core instruction is really helping to enhance and close that gap in that learning loss gap.
Okay.
Renee, how long have we been in this format for this report card?
This is the first year.
This is the first year?
Yes, yep. They just transitioned. This is the very first year of having the star ratings. Before we had letter grades. Yes. I said it kind of, so we used to have like A, B, C, D, and F. Now we have 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, 2, 1, right? So, but, so yes.
And you're going back 3 years according to that?
Yes.
Line? Okay.
They were sneaky.
So that is our progress. The next, excuse me, would be gap closing. So what we're looking at here is a measure of the reduction in educational gaps for student subgroups. So this gets a little bit complicated, so I'm going to try to keep it surface level here, okay? What it does is it looks at each of our subgroups of students, warranted that we have enough kiddos to make up a subgroup. Okay, sometimes we may not have, there's like 11 or 12 different subgroups that you could potentially have in a district, right? We don't have some of those subgroups, and that's fine. They're just not shown on here then. But what this does is it breaks it down and it allows you to see where we are at in regards to closing that achievement gap for these groups. So if you look here, it shows you your English language arts achievement, remember, and then math achievement. And remember, achievement just means, did they meet that mark or not, right? Are they proficient or not? And if you can see, I'm really excited. If you look at both the ELA and mathematics, that red dot is the state expectation. So we've exceeded the state expectation for all subgroups in regards to achievement. But we're going to go down a little bit. Here we go. This is where we talk about growth. And then you can see, once again, where we are at in regards to, sorry, I'm trying to make this a little bit smaller so that we can see the subgroups. I can tell you where we are struggling with still are our multiracial population, our students with disabilities, and our economically disadvantaged. Okay? We have done some incredible work at our high school. We recognize this as an area for growth, and we've done some incredible, Mr. Farrell and his team has done some incredible work at the high school to identify the why and put supports in place to provide interventions and resources to those students that fall into those particular subgroups. Okay. We're almost done. Graduation, it looks at our 4-year and our 5-year graduation cohorts. Are our kids graduating, right? And so it takes those things into account. And once again, we have a 4 out of 5. I will tell you at the high school, again, our school counselors are working to make sure that they have these crazy spreadsheets where they're tracking every single student, what classes are they taking, what do they still need to take in order to be able to successfully complete their their high school education and graduate on time. So a lot of work that has been done there. Our early literacy, we do have a 3 out of 5 here. And let's go in and look a little bit about what this means. And I am going to do a very quick crash course here, okay? So this is very different from years past. In years past, it was only the left-hand side of your screen that was calculated in this calculation. There are now 2 new components. Those are the things you see on the right-hand side. And so we're going to go over those first. So the first thing it talks about is how many third graders met the third grade reading guarantee requirements for promotion to 4th grade. Okay. I'll tell you honestly, we are not even, that is not included in here yet this year. It starts next year. Okay. That's why you see that 100%. So there are certain levels, like on the Ohio State test, you have to reach a certain sub-score in order to reach that promotional score to be promoted to 4th grade. So how many of our kiddos here at Marlington met that? The second part is flat out how many third graders scored proficient on that Ohio State test. So those are two flat out scores, okay? The next part on the left-hand side is focused on students who are off track. So in kindergarten through 3rd grade, we give a diagnostic at the beginning of each year, and then we have to report how many kids are they on track or are they off track. And then from there, that next year, the goal is that anybody that was off track moves to on track that following year. And that's where this particular rating comes from. So if you look, we started off with 117 students off track that moved to 62 students on track, so that would be where we get the 53%. Okay? So this goes, I expect this measure to get even better because of all of the focus that we have in our K-2 literacy and with the very specific professional learning we've done and the resources that we've provided. So, yep.
When you're comparing you're going from off track to on
Yes.
track, so you're doing the testing in the fall, like
Yes.
October, right?
It's a fall to fall.
Fall
Mhm.
to fall. Okay, so where's the May? Isn't there a testing in May? Or in the
Yes,
spring?
this is something different.
Okay.
So, good question. So we use our kindergarten readiness assessment, the KRA, as our kindergarten diagnostic. And then in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, we used to use the state screener. It was just, you print off its paper. We now are using MAP because we're already using NWEA MAP. We're already giving those assessments. That is what we are using as our diagnostic. It's not the state test. That's a good question. So we're using that diagnostic and looking at that and using those measures, are the students on track or off track? And then we provide interventions, right? Students are put on reading improvement monitoring plans. And then the goal is by that next fall, we retest them in the next grade level. Hopefully everything we've done has worked and they're no longer off track.
So the kindergarten readiness assessment, is that how you based, because I know a lot of the kids got letters saying
Yes.
you need help in reading.
Yes. That is absolutely how we determine
Okay.
whether a student is placed on, it's called a RIMP.
Okay.
So if they get a RIMP, if they are off track on that kindergarten readiness assessment in kindergarten, then they are placed on a RIMP and they receive title support.
Okay.
Yep. Good questions. Okay. And then other than that, the last part, which we aren't going to go into yet, only because it's not, there is going to be this college career, workforce, and military readiness. This is going to be I think it's a great measure because it's going to ensure that we are really providing opportunities for all students, no matter what pathway they're choosing after graduation. So I am very proud of our district. I think this is a great report card. I think, I can't remember. I should know this number. We did really well in regards to like where we were at. I looked up some neighboring districts and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty competitive, so I like to look at those rankings and stuff. But I think we're taking pride in the work and the results that are showing here. And I think with everything, the intentional work that we are doing now, that we only have room to grow. So I'm excited to see what next year's report card looks like.
Great.
Any other questions? Okay, that's all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I love my team. Do you need me to get off?
Okay, good evening. Mr. Swisher, I'm the superintendent. I'm here to give the November meeting. This was just a short turnaround from last month. We only had about 3 weeks here. I'm going to stick to, typically what I do. We're going to talk about some reasons to celebrate. I'm going to talk about how my community meetings went, give you a little bit of what was discussed and what I talked about, and where kind of direction of where we're going with the now. We're talking about reasons to celebrate. Let's talk about the renewal levy. Okay, I'm extremely grateful to our community, to our partnerships. Until it comes along, we have federal and state funds. We're going to need operating levies to operate, and it's going to help us continue to move forward. I mean, we still have budget challenges, as we were just shown, but this renewal levy was huge. Having it pass, 58.9%, and obviously it was against 41, which is basically 60-40 if that's how you want to look at it. It was a nice turnout, and we just want to. It's definitely a reason to celebrate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the now. Our fall athletes. We're going to talk about this more in December, but I just want to kind of give you a quick. It's been a great fall. I mean, and I'm going to run down this. It'll take me about 30 seconds. This is just Marlington here. I mean, our boys cross country. Let's start there. They were Stark County champions in all divisions. We were EBC champions, district champions, regional champions, state champions. Colin Cernansky was a state champion. He was EBC Runner of the Year, Stark County Runner of the Year, and Academic All-Ohio. Nash Minor was 4th place at state and Academic All-Ohio. Michael Nichols, 5th place at state. Logan Santino, 32nd at state. Cohen, 45th at state, Academic All-Ohio. Luke Ryan, 85th at state, Academic All-Ohio. Jace Brock, 95th at state. All those numbers help us get to where we are at to be a 2-time state champion. That's just boys cross country. Girls cross country, we have Bella Graham, EBC, again, Runner of the Year. Stark County Runner of the Year. 4th straight year to be both EBC and Stark County Runner of the Year. She was 7th at state and Academic All-Ohio. Girls golf, we were the EBC champions, Tri-County champions, and Maria Warner was our EBC Player of the Year. Volleyball, EBC champions, district champions. Lainey Graffis was EBC Player of the Year, District Player of the Year, and Honorable Mention All-Ohio. Natalie Marana was Stark County Division II Player of the Year. Girls Tennis, Elizabeth Mason, EBC Player of the Year. Boys Soccer, EBC Champions, David Hobeck, EBC Player of the Year. 6 out of the 9 Players of the Year all came from Marlington in the fall. So we'll go more into that in December, but that's just a quick overview, something to really talk about as fall sports wrap up. It's just absolutely been an amazing fall. We had our elementary, November 4th, our elementary math, reading, and title nights. Okay, so this was at our elementary, each elementary building on November 4th held their math night and family reading nights. The purpose of the events were to promote educational engagements to our families through fun and engaging reading and math activities. This annual event usually takes place every fall right after Halloween, and the parents look forward to it. We had over 300 family members attending or more, probably in each building or total. And I just want to thank our staff, our title staff, our general education staff, and our classified staff for putting these on, because each building had a different theme, and they really did a good job promoting it. And the families that went, and board members that went, I think they had a good time. So this was at Lexington's title night. We had Marlboro's title night, and then we had Washington's title night. So we do this every year, and it was a really good turnout. We also had our district. We had a volleyball that night too, so we had kind of people all over the place, but it was an excellent time. And Mrs. Cayley, so I'm not going to touch on it, is obviously the recent awards. We did talk about the $200,000 literacy grant. Obviously, the Ohio Leadership Advisory Council gave us the award. We're the only district in the state. It just goes to show the hard work of our staff. I mean, sometimes these awards
are just to show the work that goes into it. It's appreciative for the time and effort they put in. It shows how effective leadership practices work. It's part of our Ohio improvement process, and it focuses on the leadership we're doing in the buildings. And that stems from the staff, that district leadership team going down. So that's kind of, we're talking about this month. Those are the reasons we're talking about celebration. We're talking about the 5-year forecast and what's next. So that's kind of where we're getting into it. This is kind of we've been waiting for that November to see how this panned out. You know, as you can see, we obviously were, you know, due to the reductions that were made over the summer because we had staff choose other leave and go to other districts or retire. The one reduction we had in the RIF, so I call it the 3 R's, as I said. At the end of the day, not replacing specific positions, taking a good look at that, obviously saved our district some money, something we needed to do. You know, on that note, we also knew when the board came in January, we were obviously told we're deficit spending. We ran a levy in May to basically keep our spending level the same, to keep our staffing level the same. Okay, and what did that cost? And I think Ryan described that, which was a significant figure. So we, you know, that levy did not pass, which is one of the reasons when, you know, as I came on board, it was one of the things that, you know, we really needed to take a good look at in some shape or fashion, which is what we did. Now, what do? We're still spending more than we bring in. All right, and that's based on what he said. It's not something that is going to be an overnight fix. It's time, and that's what we started. We started being able to take a good look. So what I'm going to, you know, I said I would say in November kind of what my next steps are for recommendations or what I'm going to talk to the board about. Obviously, I need to continue to monitor spending. You know, when we talk about evaluation of staff and programming, that's always ongoing. As staff, you know, so from that standpoint, that's always looked at. Typically, once we get in past this November forecast, we really start looking at, you know, we're talking about next year. I mean, it's not going to be long here before these 2 months go by fast for Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays. You get into January, we're talking about planning for next year. It happens quickly. This is very normal. So we're going to continue to do that. We got to be mindful of the economy. So we got to pay close attention there. We're going to need to look at an ESSER review. We've already started. You know, Mr. Swift asked what money's coming back in, and he kind of said there's a number there, but then Ryan also said that's not all coming back in. Some of that is just purchases now that we're able to spend, one-time purchases. You know, for example, obviously, if we're replacing MacBooks that are up, you know, for the district, which we will be on the board for tonight, that comes out of that money. But then that's a one-time thing that goes now for those MacBooks should last 5 to 6 years. It's not an ongoing expense. But we do need to review ESSER and make sure, and we're doing that already. Patty and I have started that conversation with the administrators, so that's another thing. And finally, there's no secret. There will be a need for new money. And I'm not defining that timetable. So we still need to monitor our spending. We still need to evaluate our staff and programming. We still need to be mindful of the economy. We still need to review the ESSER. And at the same time, I need to come up with a thought or a process that's going to be in the best interest of the district and our community of what that's going to look like. And I don't have that answer right now, but that's what after you get this forecast, that's what I told you to start doing. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Second, the Marlington Post. I haven't even actually looked at the survey one result yet. I'm waiting, like I said. We do have it on our website. We have the QR. We do have the link. I have it on paper back here. The paper will be in the school buildings also, if they're not already. And it's just, I got to get them out in more locations. But I told you there's no timetable with this. I'm trying to get as much feedback as possible to figure out how best to communicate with our stakeholders in the district. Finally, the community meeting discussions. As I've talked about, I've tried to get out as much as possible in my first 2 months as superintendent to kind of talk to ministers, preachers, community meetings, our staff, and I had a list up there. And I just kind of want to talk about what was talked, what I kind of discussed and some feedback I got from it, because it's going to continue. Let me be very clear. This is something that I have to continue to do. One of the questions was asked to me of how many people do you really talk to? And I would say, and the number is probably not wrong. I mean, if I look at every person I've talked to that's probably not a staff member, maybe 200, maybe 250. And there, but when I put that in perspective, I think that's a great number for me, because those people typically will talk to at least one other person. You talk to one other person, that kind of multiplies out beyond what was there. And I think that resonates. What I can tell you right now is some highlights from those meetings. There was the rumor mill. That's what I guess you want to call it. So I made very clear. All right, you have 5 board members standing, here, and I made it very clear that these 5 board members are amazing to work for, and things cannot have gone more smooth the last 2 to 3 months, at least in the position I'm in. But I wanted to clear up rumors, because that's been asked at every meeting, and there was basically 4. Rumor 1, the levy fails, which it did not, thank you. We are going to be absorbed by all our surrounding districts, Alliance, Waterloo, Louisville, Lake, Minerva. If I missed something that surrounds me, that's fine. That is not true. There would be no chance our district is going to be absorbed. We're a $20+ million company. And I try to put it in very simple terms that even if levy failures, we still are very close to what we call 20 mil floor. There's going to be mills that are going to be taxed on no matter what. So that was just a rumor I put to sleep. Shutting down a building. There's been 0 conversation from this board of shutting down a building since I've taken office or as an intern. We're not shutting down a building. I'm not recommending to shut down a building. And I told the staff that, and I've told that. Career tech. I'm not recommending we remove or relocate our career tech. 50% of our seniors in Stark County are in the trades. I think we need to find opportunities to bring more opportunities for our kids here, and that's an ongoing discussion that we're starting to have now. We look at and evaluate, as we said, staff and programming. That is part of everything. Career tech is part of that. But in general, from a standpoint of saying, hey, let's just remove it, not a conversation the board has had, nor is a conversation that I want to recommend. Finally, grade leveling. We're going to take it and we're going to grade level all the buildings. The board has not directed me, nor has any conversation whatsoever about grade leveling. Is it a conversation I want to have? Yes, it is. But it's not a conversation right now. If I'm going to have a conversation about grade leveling, who does it truly affect? It affects the students, and it affects the parents, and it affects the community. So I'm too new in the job to make any type of recommendation at this point. There's pros and cons of both sides because we're such a large district. But are our elementaries equitable? They are not. So those are some things that I at least have to, as a superintendent, I would not be doing my job if I didn't at least, with my administrative team, with my staff, with the board, say, hey, you know, what do I need to look at here to make things equitable and fair from all aspects? But no, the board has made no direction to say, hey, we're going to grade level next year. So like those 4 rumors, I just kind of want to I just kind of got those out of the way. I talked about Nexus, which you were cleared up with tonight. I talked about the importance of culture. And it's not an overnight fix, and it's going to take time. And I think we're really going in the right direction. Questions. I had questions about levy, obviously. We had questions about staffing. We had questions about, what's your direction to move forward. We had questions about Facebook. And I made it very clear I don't address Facebook. And I will not. All I can say is I have absolutely enjoyed going to Booster Club meetings, having the meetings at the churches, talking to my staff, going out in the community and talking to people, been to, or seeing somebody at their house or talking to whatever, because they all have good questions. Even our own parents that sit in buildings still today, up until a week ago, firmly believed. I had a question from a parent that's on our PTO, and I meet with the PTOs, and they were debating how to upgrade elementary equipment because they thought maybe, back to the rumor mill, we're going to close an elementary. So we got to continue to move that message forward right now. But at the end of the day, we've done what we can, and we're going to continue to be fiscally responsible and do that. But at some point in time, we got to talk about what's next. So that's kind of where I was at with those. So those community meetings are going to continue. I plan on continuing to rotate through churches, through the townships, so I will get that information out when I schedule the next round. I'm going to continue to hit the trustee meetings. And the trustees have given me some advice on some things that they would like to see from bringing the 3 trustees together and having discussions to make sure that if we're ever going to discuss any type of, they gave the example, if you're going to talk about adding a renewal levy was coming up, or any levied amount, or anything, it used to be there was a discussion amongst the 3 townships about when's the best time to do it, and those types of things. So we're going to get back into that, so we're scheduling those. So that's all I have for tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to start under old business here. So we are in the second reading of our board policies. So I'm going to recommend the motion to approve the following resolutions from volume 41. Number 1 of August 22 is listed below. The policy numbers are there. So obviously also in the packet I gave you is the same that I gave you last month, which would have been a short review of the policies, which we did our first read. And the changes of those policies were strictly legal law changes only.
Is there a motion to approve the resolutions from volume 41, number 1 through August 2022 as listed?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Okay, under new business, we're going to have 3 items this evening. Our first item on the agenda is the high school roof resolution. So I recommend the motion to approve the high school roof resolution as seen in Exhibit A.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I'd just like to clarify, we had discussion at the work session in regards to the pricing of the roof project versus a quote we had gotten from Plug Smart 2 years prior. I reached out to Will from Amoresco, who was at that meeting, spoke to him on the phone about current pricing. Even though it's close to 50% or around 50% more than that quote from 2 years ago, according to him, that's where we are right now with the roofing prices. There's been increases in material and labor that have been significant. I also did talk to him in regards to the roofing materials that were used at Marlboro and Washington and Lexington, and there was some mention of issues with that roofing material. He said that he hadn't heard of any problems with those specifically over other roofing types. So I just wanted to, get that information out there. And if somebody has any specific information with sources or references as to issues with those, I'd like to see that. And that's all I have for that.
Appreciate it.
Any other comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Second item under new business is the MacBook purchase. It's to recommend the motion to approve the purchase of MacBook computers as is seen in Exhibit B.
Motion,
So moved.
Second.
discussion.
I just want to point out that this is coming out of ESSER, as pointed out. It is a one-time purchase, they should last the next 5 to 6 years. This is replacing the staff, which is our current staff that are 5 years in. We will then resell those and obviously offset some of the costs we have here, which is what we do every time. Other than that, that's all I have. They're out of ESSER.
What is this the high school?
This is district-wide. This is staff.
Oh,
Staff,
okay.
not kids. Kids have no MacBooks.
Oh, okay.
We changed that 3 or 4 years ago, or a couple years
2
ago.
years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
The final one on new business is just an out-of-state field trip. We recommend the motion to approve the following out-of-state field trip. Weirton, West Virginia. This is December 27th through 28th, 2022. This is our boys' basketball team.
Is there,
Oh,
Mark and Jonathan second?
Sounds good.
Second, John.
Discussion?
The basketball tournament is actually in Ohio. They cross the river to eat dinner, which would qualify as an out-of-state field trip.
Correct. Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Treasurer's agenda.
I have a few items on the list tonight. The first one is just the 5-year forecast to be submitted during November. If I could just highlight a few things. Of course, the forecast is done twice a year. It's covers the general funds, 001 only, and it's divided up into revenues and expenditures. I wanted to call your attention to a couple things. We talked about ESSER funds and the deficit spending and how that's going to affect us. And you can see this in the expense portion as we look at that. If you look at column 2024, we see some professional purchase services coming in. Those are our nurses, our officers, things like that. As Mr. Swisher talked about, we are looking at each of those expenses, and we're starting now to look and see what needs brought over, and what we can possibly not bring over to the general fund. If you look at 2025, that's when we bring those are our personnel over, as well as their benefits. So those are the years that ESSER is really pinpointing. Like we said, the ESSER funds, we were looking at 3 million. If you look out on 2025, look at the cuts, think about inflation, we're down to about 2 million now. So we're getting there. We're doing a good job. We just have a bit more work left to do when those come in. If you look at 6.010, that is your budget. That shows you if you're deficit spending or not. As you can see with the 2 years, I'd like to say that's your awesome treasure that you made budget, but however, that is the ESSER funds coming in, and we made budget those 2 years. When health and wellness came back over, we talked a lot about the 467 fund. Instead of bringing that over, we moved that into the ESSER funds to move that out a couple more years, and you see that coming over. Those are our counselors, those items, okay, that we were using that 467 for. If you look at our renewal levy, we have a renewal levy coming up in 2026. And I would like to take the opportunity to just thank the community for supporting our renewal levy. That did help. It's going to make a difference. And if you don't have any questions, if you do have questions, let me know. But those are really the highlights that I wanted to. Oh, I should address also on a local level. You're looking at our personnel for this year, for 2023. Our last payday falls on June 30th. So we had 27 pays in this fiscal year. Just my luck. So that's where you're seeing, we talked about the 700,000, or we have an extra pay in this fiscal year. And also our cuts, our new contracts start in September. So as Ryan said, you're seeing some of that savings this year. Because our new contract started, we had a little carryover going into this fiscal year, a couple months. So those are where you're seeing the differences. Okay. Any questions particularly?
I have a question in regards to, I know Ryan went over the numbers for 2024 versus the May forecast, and there was a difference of about, let's see here, for personal services 3.010, from the May forecast to this one, it went down about 1.3 million for 2024 versus the old forecast. However, he did mention that purchase services went up 290,000 for some, additional costs from, that's filling some of those positions that aren't, directly employed. What positions are those for 2024? Do we know? Can we get a breakdown?
2023,
Or 2024, it goes.
our
let's see.
purchase services coming over would be those officers and
Well, then-
the nurses. That was on the House bill and the ESSER funds.
But wouldn't that have been the same as our previous forecast? I'm saying there's an increase from our May forecast to this forecast that he pointed out of, I think it's around 290,000 increase for purchase services for 2024.
Okay, for 2024,
Yeah.
I have a 3.5 and we have 3.692. If you look at the 2023, we had in the last forecast 3.296. As you can see, I extended those nursing services and some of that officer as far out as I could so
Okay.
that we could not use our own cash. So that's what we've been doing, is using the ESSER funds as well as we can to reserve those funds, to make them last as long as they can. But those ESSER funds are going away, so we no longer have that option to support the budget with those. Does that answer your
Yep.
question?
Thank you.
Okay, I don't think we had, do we have a motion for that, to accept the 5-year forecast as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we just had discussion. Any more discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Pass 5-0. The next item on the agenda is to recommend that we approve the minutes for October 12th, 20th, and November 3rd.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Pass 5-0. The next one is to recommend that you approve the financial reports for October 31st.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Anything you want to highlight?
The first one, the first attachment you'll see is just that we did reconcile for the month. The second one, I will just highlight, I believe it's on the third page. There is one, Carefree Education, the second page. Seventh one down. That is an ESSER fund. I like to highlight those. And then the last attachment is the fund balances. An unencumbered balance for 001, $7,475,341.14. The next one is the PI fund at $1,204,802.83. And then your 070, the balance is $961,427.06 for unencumbered. And in a few minutes, I will ask for a transfer. So we will add $877,117.65 for a total of 1.8.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Do we have a motion?
Do we have a motion?
Josh was first.
Yeah.
I was second.
No, Mark motioned and Jonathan
Sorry.
seconded. That's okay, you were getting ready to. Yes. Mark?
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Pass 5-0. The next item is to approve the donations as listed.
Is there a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Second.
Mark and then Jonathan second. Discussion? Want to read those?
Jacqueline Ramirez, Marlington Boys Basketball, $50. Lisa Schrock, the Rocks Program, $100. And Grace Community Church, Rocks Program, $500.
That's awesome, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Pass 5-0. The next item on the agenda is to ask for a fund-to-fund transfer of $877,117.65 from the general fund to the Capital Projects Fund 070. This is our Nexus payment.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Dan, can you explain why this is beneficial versus keeping it in the general fund?
Yeah, because, well, right now, we're obviously, we've been discussing for the last 4 months some major projects. You know, obviously, we were hoping to tack a little bit more than what we could start with tonight, but obviously due to the holdup right now with the tax commissioner being going back to court, we're gonna have to scale back, but still, you know, continue to move forward at the same time. So we have the loan lease payment through 26, 27 school year, so that's basically, we need to make sure we're funneling enough money for that, which is roughly $775,000, $800,000. Then obviously we need to continue to put additional funds in there to cover the roof project and then the additional phases from there. And then obviously if we have any other major things that come up, I think that's why it's there on that side of it. And then I think once in my, like I said at the work session, I think once we get through the loan lease payment, and that'll get us obviously through the roof project, we're still going to be bringing in significant money from the Nexus, and then I think maybe around 27, then that's when maybe you have a discussion. Is there other opportunities then to move forward with how you're going to do it? You know, so that's why it's, I think you got to look at the big picture at all when we're talking about everything I've talked about tonight versus that. So that's just my recommendation right now.
Okay, thank you. Reason I wanted to know is because in the past there was criticisms of taking money out of the general fund from the previous board majority, and I think it's good to know that the current board majority board is doing the same thing. So apparently it's not as bad as what the critics of the past had made it.
Either way, I don't know. I don't buy into really board majorities at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Superintendent's going to make a recommendation. This is my recommendation. I think it's,
I think it's a
what
solid
was done
one.
is where we're at, and I think that's where we're going to go forward.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Pass 5-0. The very last item on the treasurer's agenda is to approve the amended appropriations as presented. As you can see, I've added budget to the 070. That will cover our first phase of roof and also our payment for this year.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Personnel.
Okay, personnel, if you guys are okay, I'd like to do this as a consent. There's not a lot here in personnel. If I need to pull anything out, please let me know. We have one classified retirement. Let me get to it, I apologize. That's Suzette Cobb. She's just a bus driver. We're gonna miss, our bus drivers are starting to choose to do something a little bit more fun and spend more time with their family, so we're gonna miss her. We have a certified or classified retirement modification. So this is Linda Freeman. She chose to retire. She was planning on leaving in February. She decided, I don't want to leave in February. I'd like to stay and continue to work. So she's going to stay on until I think July. I think is what is on there. So we're going to change that for her. We have 2 supplemental resignations. It's just right there, Meredith Wilson and Mr. Collins, for a few things they do. We have 1 non-traditional sub we're hiring. We have then our supplemental hires that kind of flow in depending on the time of the year, or coaches that we need, or positions at the high school, middle school, or elementary that need to be filled. And we have 1 supplemental pay change. This was just the fact that vocal music for our elementary should be a 1.0, not a 0.34 and a 0.66. So I need to correct that.
Okay, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Announcements.
Okay, just on announcement side, obviously we had a parent-teacher conferences tonight. We have Monday, there'll be an all-call going out tomorrow about for parents to be able to get on the Home Access Center and check report cards. And then obviously Monday is a professional development day for our staff, so we do not have school for our students. They'll have that all-call go out tomorrow. We have conferences next on November 15th. Obviously, we're on Thanksgiving break, the 23rd through the 28th. And then we have our annual Frosty's Boutique coming up on the 3rd. And then obviously fall sports are starting to get wound up here. So or winter sports, I apologize. So that's be coming up.
Okay. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on December 15th at 7 p.m. here in DLZ. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Some of,
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ryan?
yes.
Mr. Swift?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Humphries?
Yes.
Mrs. Krupko?
Yes.
Pass 5-0.
Thank you for coming.